Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of your favorite NFL podcast that has been sweeping the nation. Going on the third season now, and we have yet to jump the shark. Will we ever be big enough to have a jump the shark moment one day on the show? I'm not entirely sure, but until we do get to that point, welcome to your favorite niche NFL podcast out there. It is the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, back once again for more fun, football, and chaos. And joining me, it feels so good to have the troublesome triumvirate together once again on the top of the screen with me. Did I say screen there? Screen with me. Screen, same thing. Our games master, Justin. Justin, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, man. How was your week?
Doing good. Training for a new work assignment the past week. It's going good. I can't wait to be having my own assignments and hopefully don't screw it up. That is my number one motto in life. Just don't screw this up. I inevitably will. So we just hope it's not too bad when that inevitability comes. Speaking of being inevitable, he is ranter extraordinaire. He is record keeper extraordinaire. And he is the pod father. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick, how are we doing? He brings out the trophy.
We're a point behind the Gopher. We're a point behind because of the damn wheel of chaos.
2023 feels like such a long time ago, doesn't it?
It feels like forever in a day, and then another day after that, and then the next day, and the next day, and the next day. Yeah, but it is good to be back with the full crew intact, and I already have my 4-point pick already set. So because I'm in last place, so let's see what happens this week. But it's not going to be the Jets, thank God, because I've learned my mistake twice over.
I think per the logic of the show and per Justin's thing, I think the Jets are only going to be picked by either myself or the Gopher going forward.
Well, you can pick against the Jets if you wanted to. I mean,
that's fair. That's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
You don't bet on Jets games. That's the rule.
It's
not picking the Jets. It's picking a game the Jets are involved in because no matter what,
it's going to go against you.
Screw you.
Yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad.
Well, I think I'm 1-0 picking the Jets this season, or 1-1 either or. So
sure,
not a bad shot for me.
No,
all right, ladies and gentlemen, we have plenty to talk about in this episode. As you guys can tell by the title, it's never too early to talk trades. After the Devontae Adams trade discussions that we started on the show last week, and we will slightly continue into this one because he will come up again, and the Podfather, of course, needs to give his direct opinions of the matter as well. We have a list, courtesy of our friends from CBS Sports, of 7 notable names that are going to be popping up over the next couple weeks as we head to the NFL trade deadline, because the NFL trade deadline this year, if my Google search from earlier is correct, which I'm pretty sure it is, November 5th is the trade deadline. It tends to be that first week of November when the trade deadline occurs. So with November 5th being the trade deadline, teams, they probably already started, but the discussions, the negotiations, all the haggling, like it's a good old-fashioned 1700s market, is going to be occurring over the next couple of weeks. And we're going to see which players that are on this list get traded and who else is going to be dealt. We might come up with a name or two at the very end, or we'll bring this back up in a few weeks' time when we get closer to the deadline itself. We're going to give you guys, for ourselves, a little bit of a preview of what we do when it comes to the head coach hot seat-o-meter, which is going to be an interesting one this season, where we're going to give a 1 to 5 on these players, 1 being lower possibility, 5 being the high end of, do we actually think they will get traded, or is this just a bunch of smoke and mirrors, essentially? Can't wait for that. But before we get to the football, we need to have fun. And with that being said, I called him many things earlier, but he is also a master of one more thing, aside from rants and records. There's 3 R's: rants, records, and rabbit holes. Podfather, what's this week's mind-blowing fact?
It's an interesting thing to talk about academics in a way when you're discussing, presidents or alumni, notable people that and what universities they may have attended, because obviously you hear about these rags to riches stories about someone who attended a prestigious school and then worked their way up and now they're whatever they are in their position. One of the Ivy Leagues get a lot of attention for all of this. I feel like everyone says I went to Harvard or I went to Dartmouth or Princeton or whatnot. Columbia University has a very interesting distinction to their alumni base, if you will. It turns out that Columbia University graduated fewer future presidents of the United States than members of the band Vampire Weekend. So here's the background to this. So there, if you go through the listing of the presidents and where they attended, technically speaking, 3 presidents attended Columbia, 2 actually graduated from there. One being Barack Obama, who graduated with a bachelor's in 1983, and one being FDR, who had a posthumous JD, was a law student there as well. But if you go through the Wikipedia page for like Columbia alumni, they list 4 presidents that are alums technically. But 2 of them graduated and 2 of them didn't. Teddy Roosevelt went to Harvard initially and then graduated from Harvard and was going to go to Columbia Law School, but then got so swept up in the machinations of the political aspect of it that he dropped out of law school instead to go be a politician. And the 4th one is Dwight Eisenhower, who actually was president of Columbia after World War II, before he became president of the United States, but never actually attended Columbia University. It was more like a ceremonial presidency. But Ezra Koenig, Chris Bayo, Chris Thompson, and the artist known by the one pseudonym of Rostam Batmanglitch, they all attended and graduated from Columbia University, where they formed the band Vampire Weekend. So if you're doing your scoreboard at home, that is 4 Vampire Weekends to 2 American presidents that attended Columbia University and graduated from there. So, it's funny that you hear sometimes that there's a lot of schools that have like these great business leaders and all that. And Columbia is known for a lot of those things. But I think the fact that they're known for more alt goth rock vampires, quote unquote, than presidents, that's a rabbit hole we can all appreciate and go down sometimes. So there you are, your mind-blowing fact of the week.
So in a best of 7 series, vampires over presidents at Columbia.
Vampires over presidents in 6, yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely not presidential you, because as everyone knows, when it comes to college football, who's wide receiver you, who's tight end you, who's quarterback you. I don't know if anyone's quarterback you at this point.
Who's kicker you, out of curiosity?
That's a rabbit hole to go down.
Military?
Maybe. But there's all this Columbia University, not presidential you. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that? I want to know what the most random college that has like multiple presidents is.
I mean, Oberlin or Hiram or some random D3 somewhere in like Ohio, maybe somewhere like that. Those are shout out to Oberlin and Hiram, by the way, because you made the random meter for this week. So there you go.
Yes. So absolutely outstanding per usual. I can't wait for the next week. This is amazing. I feel like I say it every once in a while, but this might be one of the better ones yet. Like legitimately, like more like Rick said, vampire, gothic, rock alt bands than presidents. That's fantastic. That no one would even think of searching that.
Yeah.
Like not even on a whim. And now people are going to search for it once they see this episode.
Exactly. Because now everyone's going to fact check and make sure that I'm right. But that's why it's my fact of the week. I'm not a damn Snapple can, people. Come on
now. That was the alternate title for this Rick Snapple fact of the week, but we decided to make it our own.
Well, I mean, I do research and make sure they're all accurate. Unlike Snapple, where it's 50 and 50. It might be true, might be a fake. You never know. So.
Oh, man. I remember Trix Yogurt when I was younger had a little thing that they did for that, but it was specifically for bees. They had like for a while, it was probably because of the Bee movie, knowing it, but they had like bee themed, like just on the cups. And either it's on the cup or like when you open it and then lick off the excess yogurt, it gives you a fact about bees. And I'm like, there you go. So we'll see that. So Rick, a step above Snapple and Trix Yogurt in terms of his fact giving, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of being a step above, this has quickly become risen to prominence as the premier game on this channel and one of the premier segments. It's right up there with Rick's rant and Rostrum podium and the hashtag SAOC pick challenge. It's right on. I think it might be on that podium with those two. Funny enough.
Step above George Trivia from home, though.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's last place. That is the kick steak sauber of the show in terms of segments and games. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for everyone's favorite edition of Name That Player. Games Master. It's been a while. It's yours.
Yes, sir. All right. So we're going to start with a 6-time Pro Bowler who won 1 Super Bowl championship, but was an undrafted player.
my only query is, did he go to 6 Pro Bowls or not? The guy's in my head right now. I'm trying to think because we've spoken about somebody who was at one point, and I think can still be up for consideration for the Hall of Fame, who was an undrafted player who was a story of this nature. I don't know.
So I have a guy in my head who I know he went undrafted. I know he won a Super Bowl.
Yep.
I don't know if the Pro Bowl number is correct.
I'm in the same boat as you with that.
Right.
Are you on offense or are you on defense?
I'm on defense for
Me
this
too.
guess.
Me too.
Do we have the same guy?
It might be. It might very well be the same guy.
Shall I go first?
Go for it.
James Harrison.
Yep, that's my guy.
Oh, interesting. No, it is not James Harrison.
Okay. Then let me pivot to my first other guess, and I don't know if he won a Super Bowl or not, but I feel like the Pro Bowls are there. I feel like he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he's still a name that we've mentioned a bunch. London Fletcher.
Oh, that's also a good name. No, it is not London Fletcher. I don't know if he ever won a Super Bowl because
I don't think he did.
Finish his career in Washington, or did he play somewhere else?
Well, he was with Buffalo for a while, but
Yeah.
I don't think he ever got into a Super Bowl team.
Well, yeah, I was going to say if that's the
Maybe
case,
Philly, but I don't think they were.
I think unfortunately in his career, because didn't he start with the Rams, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or is that like it's him or someone else I'm confusing that came to the Rams like just a season or two after they won the Super Bowl with the greatest show on turf? It's like, can you imagine how frustrated you must be to sign with that team that should have won multiple championships, but you just missed out on the one that they happened to get?
It's awful. Moving on.
Yeah. Next round, Justin.
So, after going undrafted, he was originally signed by the Baltimore Ravens. Eventually, going on to a 13-year career. It's 13 years. He was All-Pro 4 times. And he was first team All-Pro twice.
First team.
So that round of hints eliminated who my second guess was. Baltimore. So, okay, undrafted.
Yep.
Won a Super Bowl. 6
Not
Pro Bowls.
necessarily with Baltimore, though. He was signed by Baltimore after being undrafted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Justin said 13-year career.
Yep.
Just trying to think of like undrafted guys for Baltimore. That whether they became something with the Ravens or not.
Yeah. Huh. Tricky.
Could it be an offensive lineman? I'm trying to think of what offensive lineman Baltimore had like before the current iteration. Who was? Oh, why am I forgetting his name? I'm trying to think of the I know he may not have won the championship with the Ravens, but I'm trying to think of the Ravens left tackle or center from the Joe Flacco winning team. And
the Super Bowl winning team?
Yeah. And if maybe it could have been one. I don't know why my head is stuck on an offensive lineman right now.
That might.
I could be horribly wrong.
It might be a good shout. You never know.
I can't think of the freaking team. Oh, this is gonna kill me.
Trying to think of who it could be. No, you know what? I feel like all those guys were drafted on that offensive line. Like
really?
McKinney was there.
Mm-hmm.
Work was the center. He was drafted in '98. Or Marshall Yanda. They were all drafted.
Yeah,
I think they were all drafted.
Okay.
I think so. Who wasn't, though, is the question. this is not the correct answer. I'm pretty sure of it because I don't think he was originally signed by Baltimore, although I do know that he was undrafted, but I don't know if the career matches up. Malcolm Butler.
Ooh, that's another good shout. It is not Malcolm Butler.
Okay.
I'm just going to say what my original second guess was just to get us to the third round of this.
Yeah.
Once Justin said Baltimore, this eliminated this player from my head, but won a Super Bowl, and I'm pretty sure, at least I think he made 6 Pro Bowls. Maybe he ended up not doing so, but Kurt Warner would have been my second guess before you mentioned the Ravens.
Kurt Warner. Jerg, you are incorrect, but I will tell you, you are on the right track because while this player was signed by Baltimore, he never actually played a game with them before moving on to the next team for his NFL career. And he was an NFL offensive lineman drafted out of North Carolina.
Infamous UNC alumni now.
Undrafted out of North Carolina.
Right.
Yes, originally because they thought he was undersized, played for 2 other teams, including winning a Super Bowl with a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Okay, now I'm trying to think of winning a Super Bowl with a Hall of Fame quarterback, an offensive lineman. Okay. Well, Hall of Fame quarterback means that they have to be in the Hall of Fame right now. You would think. Or we're just assuming that they will get in the Hall of Fame, which, I mean, fair shot.
Remember, though, it's not.
Double checking. I mean, he's if he's not in the Hall of Fame now, he definitely will be in the Hall of Fame. But I'm pretty sure he's in the Hall of Fame already.
Offensive.
Could it be a Colt?
Yeah, he is in the Hall of Fame.
That's the first thing that came into my mind.
Oh, but you said he is in the Hall of Fame now.
No, I was thinking of the quarterback. Like when he said
quarterback is in
playing with a Hall of Fame quarterback, then that I'm trying to think like, okay, I feel like this is semi-recent. Hall of Fame quarterback, won a Super Bowl, and now I'm trying to think of offensive lines. So you have Peyton. He's in the Hall of Fame. Trying to think of his offensive lines. Brett Favre, 1-1. That was in the 90s. Maybe it could be that. Eli's not in the Hall yet. He shouldn't be first ballot, but that's a different combo. Ben's not in the Hall of Fame yet. He definitely shouldn't be first ballot, but that's a different combo.
Yep.
We know Brady and Breeze are going to get in, but again, they're not technically in the Hall of Fame. But we
know
they will be. But this is a current Hall of Famer.
Correct.
So before Peyton, who were the guys winning Super Bowls? Which the answer is technically still Brady. But who aside from Brady? Poor Peyton, the fact that Tom has that many Super Bowls. Oh, man.
Oh.
You might have a better guess than me because I'm struggling on this one, Rick. It's ironic I'm on the right track, but Lord knows I'm not hitting this finish line. Oh, my God. UNC, offensive lineman, undrafted.
Justin?
Rick?
Is there a funny little portion of this player's name that might have something to do with the day that we're recording this and going live? Is it Jeff Saturday?
It is. It is Jeff Saturday, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I would like to think he is. He had a fantastic career after being undrafted. Played for the Colts for 12 years, 11 years before being signed by the Green Bay Packers for a year. I think it was a 2-year contract, but maybe he retired after the first year. Snapped the ball to 2 what will be Hall of Fame quarterbacks, whether we like it or not, and had a storied career. I thought about throwing in a little point of him being an interim head coach, but I thought that might give it away.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to forget that part of his NFL career because
I'm sure he does.
With the success that he had on the field as a player, that's great enough. And then the coaching,
Well, I mean, he did have a lot of success as the Hebron Christian Academy head coach.
Yes.
From 2017 to 2020. So, but Yeah,
I don't think he's getting into the Hall of Fame as the Hebron Christian Academy head coach.
He's probably going to be recognized for his on the field talents.
Probably,
as one of the best centers in our generation, I think.
I forgot that he was undrafted though.
Undrafted out of North Carolina.
Yeah,
not a lot of stats.
Yeah,
I figured it's time we threw an offensive lineman in there.
Yeah, they deserve some love too. Why not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wow. What a that's a fantastic one right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, that Ravens one is always something you forget about with Saturday too, because I completely forgot that
he never played a game for them. That's why.
A team that nabbed him up before Indy.
He was cut and immediately signed by the Colts.
Yep.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. You know what's a funny other fact you could have also threw in there, Justin? His coach in North Carolina is still the coach in North Carolina, even though in different years.
That's
a break in between.
We love that. We love that. So, real quick, funny enough, searching up Saturday here, there's one little excerpt that's coming up when you search them up and when you go to Wiki. I love this. Saturday first came to the Colts' attention during the '98 season when his former college teammate Nate Hobgood-Chittick was on the roster. And as he recalled later on, I had no footing at all with the team, so I stood out of Bill Polian's door in my dirty sweats saying a prayer. I walked in and said, there's a guy selling electrical supplies in Raleigh right now who whipped all those first-round draft choices at North Carolina every day. And Bill Polian looked at me and said, I love it. Let's get him in here for a workout. And it just goes from there.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Do you think that Jeff Saturday, once a year calls Nate Hobgood-Chittick and thanks him?
I hope.
Yeah.
Probably should.
At least once, just
that is the definition of he gets a Christmas card every year.
Yeah, a Christmas card, not an edible arrangement, because that's only for people you hate.
Yeah, true. No, Christmas card every single year for a guy like that. He got him on the Colts. Let's be real here. Let's call a spade a spade. He got him in Indy. That's a great one. Oh my god. So fantastic, Justin. Great addition of naming that player. A mind-blowing fact that blew the people's minds. A name that player that tested us, brought us right to the brink. Right to the brink.
It was pretty close. I thought I was going to get you guys this time.
Yeah. For jokes, I was probably just going to say on the last one, Braylon Edwards, just for the hell of it, even though I know that one is not wrong. But
that's really play great offensive line.
No, I'd say not. Ezekiel Elliott too. Not a lot of great offensive linemen.
Zeke still has potential to be a backup center in Dallas. It could still happen. The transformation can begin. But who knows? I mean, will Dallas be in the trade market, guys? We never know. But what we do know is plenty of guys will be on there. See, that's a transition, ladies and gentlemen. From the fun to the football, with plenty of chaos intertwined in the whole show. Chaos is in the title for a reason. If you haven't picked that up by now, that's actually in fairness. Anyway, we have, as I discussed at the top, we have garnered ourselves a little bit of a list. We retrieved it from the headquarters of CBS Sports. AKA they posted it on IG, and we're just going to take the content because we appreciate it. And we're going to discuss 7 names that they gave us here for trade deadline targets in this upcoming deadline here in a few weeks. And we're going to rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. We're going to give our takes. Teams are going to pop up that we could mention. And in those teams, we're probably going to mention hey, they did really good recently, or hey, they're not great. They could use a little bit more firepower going into this. So let's just continue on from last week. Justin and I kind of gave a lot of our thoughts already. We could add a little bit more here, but I think it's only fair we begin with the first of the names on this list. And it's literally the first image to the most left side of the screen on it. So that's right. Davante Adams. Justin gave his thoughts. I gave my thoughts, our thoughts about his situation with the Raiders now and where he could go. Podfather, it's your turn now to properly give your 2 cents and more on this situation. So the floor is yours. The first of the veteran players on this post that we discussed, and not the last wide receiver. There's others on this as well. Davante Adams.
You feel bad for him, right? Because the 2 top teams I think that would be on his wish list are teams that have now, in 1 week, gone from viable contenders to really messed up situations. I mean, he's also on a really messed up team. Let's discuss that too. The Raiders are going now to Aiden O'Connell to start this week because Gardner Minshew's magic ran out. So, there's that. He wanted to go to the Saints because Derek Carr is there, his old college teammate, but now Derek Carr is going to miss multiple weeks. So Spencer Rattler's starting. He wanted to go to the Jets because of Aaron Rodgers, But now with my bottom headline, you see there, salutations. Is that too soon? Robert Saleh's no longer there, so the Jets are in flux. So it's almost like Davante Adams had a specialized degree in something in college and is now looking for work, and all of the employment agencies he's gone to say, "Yeah, sorry, we got nothing for you." It's like, why don't you just stay where you are? I don't like where I am. No, just stay where you are. But no, just stay where you are. Could I see a team possibly swinging for it? Absolutely. A team that I think needs a big name wide receiver. I mean, even though Khalil Shakir's been playing great, I think Buffalo is a good option for him. I think that the Bills present an opportunity for him to be a wide receiver one under a good system with a strong contingent of wide receivers and tight ends. And, the Bills need a number one receiver. Maybe Keon Coleman was going to be that guy, but he hasn't translated into that fully. And again, Shakir has been a standout player, but he's not your number one guy. He's more of your number two or your slot three. So I feel like Davante Adams going to Buffalo makes a lot of sense for them, what they need. I've seen a lot of talk about Pittsburgh as well. And the only thing that I'm not crazy about with the Steelers is, the quarterback situation. Here's the thing. If it was Russell Wilson that was starting there, I think that Davante would stamp that as his approval and say, I want to go there. But because of the flux of the QB room over there too, Justin Fields has proven that he's okay. But again, for whatever reason, when a wide receiver goes to Pittsburgh, 2 years later, they go into behavior therapy. It just doesn't seem like it's the right call for Davante at this point in his life and his career. So I like Buffalo for him. I think that if he's going to make a move, that might be the right call. I know that there are teams in the division that want a Davante Adams, like a Kansas City, or Denver. But in all honesty, the Raiders will do the right thing to not trade him within the division, because that's just cutting off your nose to spite your face. And ironically, he'd be going to a team that in Buffalo has helped Kansas City draft really good players over the last couple of years. So, score one for the good guys, as Scott Hall used to say, I suppose. But I think that's as good a first option, I believe.
Yeah. It'll be very interesting to say the very least. And I think the thing that everyone has kind of agreed upon ever since the Adams trade rumors came out is the fact that whatever, like the original asking price the Raiders put out there, they're not going to get that, because you're talking about a guy who has plenty of money to end the season. I gave the breakdown last week of like what it entails to take on his cap for the remainder of the season, but also the last 2 years of his deal. Now, the last 2 years of his deal don't really have any guaranteed money on it, so there would have to be some sort of contract rework. And I told Justin that my thoughts would be, depending on the team, probably just going to end up being a case like the Texans did with Stephon Diggs, right? When they traded for him, they're basically tearing up the last 2 years of his deal, and he's going to hit free agency one last time. And I mean, Stephon Diggs and Davante Adams hitting free agency together would be wild, to say the very least. But it's one of those things where, like, if a team is only going to pick them up for, and it depends even when the trade's going to happen at this point. Like, if a team is only going to pick them up for 8-9 games in the regular season, and then, you hope for 2 or 3 games in the postseason, that's less than a full season of time. Like, what are you really going to get for that? And that's why part of me kind of suspects and would lean towards, I mentioned them last week, even though like they're not getting enough, because like you said, Rick, the top 2 targets were the Jets and the Saints because of the connection with the quarterbacks there. Well, and we'll talk about the Jets specifically here in a moment's time. We're going to potentially veer off on a side road before returning to the main trade highway about that. But like, Derek Carr is hurt. Now it's Spencer Rattler. Who knows what he can do? I'll say this. I like Spencer Rattler, so I hope he does have some success, but it's probably going to be a tough first week or two for the kid. And who knows what's going to happen right now, because the Jets, in their amazingness, like, yes, they took away the play calling duties from their current offensive coordinator, but they gave it to Todd Downing. Ask Tennessee Titans fans if they're big Todd Downing guys. So it's kind of like a no-win situation right now if you're Davante. And there's a reason why I mentioned Green Bay last week. If anyone would actually be willing to kind of to an extent, you would consider it an overpay for Davante, it'd be the team that would love to get him back in a Packers uniform for a quick little run here. Because as nice and promising as some of the wide receivers, young receivers have been on that team, there's just been no consistency. And like, it's a pick, like, take your pick if you're Green Bay. Which receiver do you want to trade for Adams? Like, this is actually a case where I could see the Raiders getting at least half of the package they wanted, because, right, they wanted a a pick and they wanted a young player coming back that doesn't take too much salary, yeah, you'd think in theory a wide receiver. Well, the Packers could do that for you. They could give you a wide receiver. And if you're Green Bay, like all due respect, not all these kids, like there have been some issues. Now, which one? Not sure. I mean, I would like to think they would try to give Christian Watson more opportunity, get more consistency, stay healthy on a more consistent basis. Romeo Dobbs has been fantastic in spurts, right? There's also Reed. There's also like it's a take your pick if you're Green Bay, but I actually think the Packers have a low-key strong chance to pick up Adams because they're kind of that team that no one is talking about, but they would be the ones probably most willing to acquiesce to what the Raiders are asking for, just if it meant taking it away, taking Adams away from Rodgers, from Carr, from everyone else. So it would be interesting. And also, I think I forgot off the top of my head, I think cap flexibility wise, they might also be in a pretty good stance for this year because I think the Bills' cap situation for this year isn't necessarily the cleanest. So it's one of those things where if Buffalo tried to make the deal, there'd be a lot more moving parts to it compared to some of the other teams. So it's interesting. But I also don't blame your Bills pick there, Rick, because we've seen the last couple of weeks, we're starting to see some chinks in that armor, and maybe they need a Devontae Adams type player there. And like you said, we kind of like Justin and I kind of like blew past the notion last week. Like you just hope the Raiders are smart enough to not trade him within division because if you trade him within division, he's going to sign a 3-year deal to extend, and he's just going to make your life torture for the next 7-8 times that he sees you. So just don't do that to yourself, I guess. Just don't. Although, I mean, they kind of like punishing their fans, so we'll see. Shall we take the detour off the trade highway real quick, boys, to talk about the main point? I will take that as a yes. Robert Saleh was fired by the New York Jets after the game in London. The Jets suffered a soul-crushing, bone-breaking, point-costing in the pick challenge standings loss to the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings moved on to 5-0, and the Jets fell to 2-3. Very unfortunate because, honestly, you got to give credit to the Jets' defense, aside from the dozen hold penalties that it felt like were being called on them on a consistent basis. They so far made Sam Darnold look the worst he has so far this season. And like it wasn't comfortable for Darnold. There was some struggles. He hit, I mean, when you throw out to Justin Jefferson, you're going to get plenty of completions, but getting the ball out consistently to the rest of the team, it was a struggle. So now the playbook is out there for Sam Darnold and what you could do to stop him. We'll see if teams can take advantage of that. Like the Jets defense has just been the story for the last 2.5 years. Did their job, but the offense did not. The first 3 interception game in how long for Aaron Rodgers? The pick 6 that he threw, I was trying to search it up. I think was that like just the 6th or 7th pick 6 of his career. He barely throws those. And now you have a situation where 2-3, you're returning from London and the head coach gets fired. And everyone's just like, oh, what? Because I got to tell you, it's the amazing thing is I was on a Zoom meeting for work when it happened. And I'm like, oh, this is something. I was shocked to say the very least. So I got to get the pulse of this from the Jets fans themselves. Rick, I'll go to you second. I want to hit Justin first, of course, in all fairness. Justin, like all the emotions you felt in that moment, how sudden it was. I like to think the three of us, like we tend to, heading into shows and like in a weekly basis, we look up plenty of stuff in the NFL. I didn't have a single pulse that this was coming for the team. I really didn't. Now that it's happened, now that we've had 72 or so hours to digest the news, looking back at the last 72 hours and everything that's come out, and obviously it's up to us to try to parse what we think is true or not. What do you think was the culmination to this decision, and now your thoughts on this decision?
Well, the circus is back in town. I mean, this is always what the Jets were. They were a headline-drawing team, but never for the right reasons. Unfortunately, I do think it was a long time coming. I mean, I didn't expect it this week. I figured maybe if they got wrecked by Buffalo, it was going to come because they do have a chance to be first in their division this week. But for 5 straight weeks, this was the most unprepared team in football. And you could just tell by the product on the field. I mean, they did not look like they knew what they were doing in any games. And they looked like they started to figure out towards the end of every game. And then all of a sudden the offense would be a little bit better and there'd be less penalties. But I mean, realistically, this is a team that maybe should be 4-1, and could have very easily been 1-4. I mean, they were pretty much gifted that Tennessee game. The only game that they really won was New England, and even that game was sloppy. I mean, they should have won that game by 40, but there was mistimed routes and bad penalties, and it's just been a consistent issue this year with this team. It's almost like they came in and expected to be gifted all these games, and they just weren't. Teams have played them well. I mean, they're New York, so there's always a bit of a target on your back, but then you were supposed to be good now. You have a Hall of Fame quarterback and a top defense, and you were supposed to be even better. And I think they expected a lot and did not prepare enough. And this is the result. And I mean, a lot of guys were surprised, but when you have a 40-year-old quarterback and a young defense, this is the only time you're going to have really to fire a coach and get things right. If it was even a week later, which I thought that they were probably going to do, it's really hard to come back when you're 2-4 in a season. You've got to do a lot more winning than losing. And I mean, they're still going to have to do that, but this team was primed and ready to go now. And as much as I liked Robert Saleh as the head coach and what he's done for this team, and especially this defense, at this point, he didn't seem like the right head coach. Because again, this is a team that looked severely unprepared in all 5 games, especially to start. I mean, you can't start like that in 5 straight games. You can't. The offense looked rough, tons of penalties. The play calling wasn't great. I mean, you have all these good young players and you have these savvy veterans, and you're forcing the ball to Alan Lazard 14 times a game, but he's got how many drops? And I understand that there are the guys that are on the same page, but you need to get other players involved. I mean, as much as I like Xavier Gibson, you drafted Malachi Corley in the 2nd round. Where is he? He played 2 snaps this year? You know, there's issues on the offensive line. That's fine. But teams don't respect this passing game right now because they're doubling Garrett Wilson, so they're taking him off the field completely. And then the only two other guys you have right now are Alan Lazard, who's got the drops. Yeah, he's got a couple good catches and a couple good touchdowns, but he was 2 for 8 to start that Vikings game. And a number of those balls hit him in the hands. And that weren't all easy catches, but 2 for 8 is not okay. All right? Mike Williams is non-existent. I don't know if they're just not targeting him. They think that maybe he could be a second half player and they don't target him in the first half. I don't really understand that. I know he's on a snap count, but so now you have no receivers and a 40-year-old quarterback. All you have now is Breece Hall and a 40-year-old quarterback and Braylon Allen, who's played well, but the only reason Braylon Allen has played well is because you don't know when he gets on the field, you don't know if it's going to be pass protection or run. When Breece Hall's on the field, 9 times out of 10, they're going to him because they know that Garrett Wilson's not part of the game. So the offensive play calling has gone stale. And now it's up to the defense to keep them in games. And don't get me wrong, they have, but it's been sloppy. Who leaves Cortland Sutton uncovered in the end zone? That can't happen. You know, I didn't agree with a lot of the penalties that happened in the Vikings game. I didn't think all those holds on Justin Jefferson were holds. If you look back at them, they're not called 90% in 90% of games. Maybe he got an advantage because they're 5-0 and he's Justin Jefferson. That's possible. That happens in the NFL. But they were still in that game. And there were too many mistakes. As much as I want to blame Aaron Rodgers for three interceptions, and, you know, you kind of have to, it didn't look like the Jets were running the right routes. This guy is 40 years old, but he's not that off, is he? And if he is, there's a major issue at quarterback. So it just, there was way too many questions at this point in the season than answers. It didn't look like things were getting better, especially the way that this team keeps starting. And the way that they're finishing games makes a lot of people think, well, shouldn't they have been in these games? I mean, with the exception of the 49ers game, they've been in every game, and they've looked like they've been gifted a couple games. But they are supposed to be better than this. And when it comes to preparation, that's got to go squarely on the head coach. Whether or not you want to blame Aaron Rodgers, whether or not you want to blame the young guys for getting penalties, whether or not you want to blame the offensive play calling, it comes down to Robert Saleh. And as rough as he's had it quarterback-wise, this year there was no excuse.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things that when you discuss it, Justin, the penalties, the lack of focus, the Patriots game aside, like just like not really getting into gear and momentum until like it's critical time. Part of that's on the head coach, like you said, like to discipline your players, to instill and establish this like sense of urgency is not the word, but playing from the opening whistle, playing from opening kickoff. And it just felt that there were too many games this season in particular that, well, I mean, I know it's only 5 of them, but like the Jets, they're kind of just in a lull. Like you said, it's almost like they expected to just roll out there and they're going to win some of these games. And that's one of those things where even if maybe like Salah's obviously, I'd like to think he's not the kind of coach to just assume that. Like there's some disconnect into what he's trying to do and what's landing with the team. And at one point, do you cut bait? And clearly the Jets decide, you know what, 5 games in, it's time. So we hear it there. Rick, your take on it as well in your return to Jets fandom here in 2024. But in all seriousness, as someone who's seen many Jets coaches as well come and go, like, and now Salah being the latest name, like, just to talk about a lot of the lead up into it and, you know, recently, like, your thoughts on it as well. But now, like, the what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like the what is the runoff effect of this going to be? Because they didn't do this during a bye week. They have a game that they have to prepare for. And how is that going to affect this game and even going forward past this Bills game, which, like Justin said, as so many things have gone wrong for the Jets as can be. They can take the lead in the AFC East if they beat the Bills.
Yeah, they could if you believed that the offense was better than it currently is, because it's just not. Going into this season, I feel like the big discussion that was to be had was this Jets offense is going to run through Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. And Breece Hall hasn't even eclipsed 200 yards rushing. 197 right now through 5 games. Braylon Allen, 143. And look, when you draft 2 running backs in the same draft class, one's going to be good and one's going to be terrible. And right now, Isaiah Davis is the unfortunate one who's terrible. Why he was drafted, I don't know. Garrett Wilson's been targeted 57 times, and he's caught 33 passes. Alan Lazard's been targeted 33 times and caught 20. You know what the big thing about those stats are? If you think about it, that's 53 catches on 90 targets. Combined, they've only had a total of 6 drops. 3 each, according to statistical metrics. What that means to me, and I know, drop passes are a new stat, but what that tells me is that they're either getting double covered and the ball's being thrown away, or the ball's not being thrown to them in a spot where they can catch it. And so that's a case where Aaron Rodgers is not having the time in the pocket to throw the passes. Justin's right. The offensive line is young and they're making mistakes. But, you know, you would expect a veteran quarterback to be able to kind of handle that a little bit better, and it just hasn't been that way. Mike Williams has been here, there, and not everywhere, which is a problem. And Gibson and Corley are just not being used properly. It's almost like Robert Saleh didn't know how to use gadget players properly for this offense. How to use like electric guys in this offense. I mean, go back to last year. The only reason they won week 1 last year after Aaron Rodgers was hurt was because the defense played well. Buffalo had a really rough game offensively, and they won on a walk-off punt return touchdown, and everyone was celebrating like they won the damn Super Bowl. And they weren't even close. You know, they were not even close. And one of the hallmarks that I always talk about, you can have the greatest defense in the world. You can have the Purple People Eaters or the New York Stock Exchange on the line, and you can have the Legion of Boom in the secondary. But if that defense is on the field constantly because your offense can't move the ball, doesn't matter how good they are, they're going to tire, and they're going to give up points. And, you know, they're making some of these quarterbacks look like kingmakers. You know, they really are. And it's not the fault of Jeff Ulbrich. I think that he's a great defensive coordinator, and I'm very happy that he's the new interim head coach, and he did the right thing by demoting Fraud Hackett and giving Todd Downing the reins to see maybe something will change. I don't know. Maybe now is the case where Aaron Rodgers will get hurt and not, actually come back into the game or try and go back and be a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld or whatever the case is. I don't know. The fact of the matter is that this has just been an underwhelming season full of really, really bad expectations and bad results. And I feel like you kind of saw this coming it's not related at all, but I'm going to kind of lobby it as like that omen. Like, in the Julius Caesar play from Shakespeare, when the soothsayer says to Caesar, beware the Ides of March. Somebody should have said to Joe Douglas, beware Hassan Reddick ain't going to play for you this year. Because that's the starting catalyst of this whole thing. All the drama in the offseason was because Reddick's not playing. Where's Reddick? Why isn't he playing? When that took away from the smoke show of, by the way, the preseason, the Jets offense did not look good at all, and I get it. Adrian Martinez and Peasley aren't Tyrod Taylor and Aaron Rodgers. But the game against the Commanders in the preseason that they won, they were outgained. The game against the Panthers was 5 field goals, I think. It was ridiculous. And even the win against the Titans, they were outgained by a Tennessee Titans team that has no business outgaining an offense that has a 40-year-old, yes, but a relatively well-known quarterback named Aaron Rodgers and electric weapons like Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Garrett Wilson. Not to mention the tight ends of Conklin and Ruckert. It's just demoralizing if you're a Jets fan because, and I said it to you in the chat, and I want to expand upon it. I said that Aaron Rodgers is the greatest con artist since Frank Abagnale Jr. and Catch Me If You Can. Well, I think if you're a Jets fan, you were sold a bill of goods. You were, because you were promised the Brooklyn Bridge, and what you got was the crappy Williamsburg Bridge instead. Not take a slight at Williamsburg, but come on now. You were sold on this idea that, this is the quarterback that's going to come here and save this team. You were sold, this is different from Brett Favre. Well, it is because he ain't playing like Brett Favre did prior to the injury. Because at least when Brett Favre was in New York, they were winning games and playing really well up until the injury. This is just a colossal disaster. And I think the impetus too, and it's a Podfather conspiracy, but it's been going around a little bit. Woody Johnson had his ego hurt because he's the ambassador to the United Kingdom under the Trump presidency, and he's got all his buddies over there, and he invited them all to the game, and his team lost in front of them to his former quarterback. I think his pride got hurt, and he reacted, and he lashed out like a baby and fired the guy instead of giving it a week, putting him on a PIP, and saying, hey, do better or you're getting fired. It was a knee-jerk reaction, And so, yes, they could still be in first place because the Patriots are god-awful, and the Dolphins don't have it together because Tua's not coming back anytime soon. So it's just the Jets and the Bills. And the Jets are somehow in this position because they got lucky against Tennessee, and even though they had 400 yards, Justin's right, that Patriots game, they were sloppy. And the problem with that is that you play the Patriots again in 2 weeks. Not at the end of the season, when it could be a game you could coast and win the division. 2 weeks. Because after that Patriots game, the schedule gets tough. Texans, Cardinals, who were playing really well. The Colts, who were trying to figure it out. The Seahawks, who may need to bounce back after Thursday night. The Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Rams, etc. from there. Maybe that Dolphins game, Tua's back. And then what do? So it's just frustrating. It really is. Because you were sold a bill of goods, and instead you got snake oil, and now you have to make the best of it. And I don't know if this is the right time, the right relationship, the right combination of factors to make the best of it and send this team to the postseason. Like that was the goal. The goal was just to get to the playoffs for the first time in 13 years or 14 years. And I don't think it's happening because the rest of this AFC is pretty good. And the Jets are fortunate to be 2-3. They really should be 1-4. They should be. That Titans game, they did not deserve to win. They got lucky. They should be 1-4. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they hitched their wagon to a guy who they're paying $110 million this year alone to. So, I don't know. Next week or the week after, you might see me open this show by burning my Aaron Rodgers jersey. Because that's the only thing that makes sense to me in this world. So, There you go.
What would be wild if we end up seeing that. And by the way, the game in between the Monday night here against the Bills and that Sunday game against the Patriots, like you guys said, that will be in Foxborough. In between that, a nice little Sunday night game. My birthday, by the way, next week. Jets Steelers in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, great.
It's not going to be an easy one, to say the very
Great.
least. No, you
That
got like
defense.
the next 3 weeks are going to be critical, and then it's a very quick turnaround, by the way, from the Sunday game against the Pats to the Thursday night game against the Texans. So really, this 3-4 game stretch here is going to be critical because that Texans game will be their last one because I think they have a bye week. I think that's when they have their bye week. You two can correct me if I'm wrong. At least like there's a gap in between in the schedule, so maybe it's just like because they're going from Thursday to the next Sunday, maybe. So, but they have. Oh, it's not their bye week. It's just going from Thursday to Sunday. So they have a little bit of time. They have like 10 days or so in between the Texans game and the Cardinals game, like you mentioned, Rick. Really up to that Texans game is you need answers on this team. And like you guys have said, doesn't look like you're going to get many answers from this, unless there is this, the typical new coach smell here, you could say, like, and hoping that this change can somehow get you this win against the Bills. The Bills are not the best of performances here in the last game, so I don't know. It's going to take a lot of luck, to say the very least, and a lot of things being fixed where God knows if it will be. So it'll be interesting to say the very least what could be happening here when it comes to the Jets season. It's very precarious, and yeah, Bills, Steelers, that's 2 tough games back to back to have, and it could be especially tough. I mean, nothing's going to happen here in the short term, but that's 2 teams that they're going to be competing with in terms of postseason standing, if the Jets still have those hopes. I mean, obviously they do, and those are 2 teams that are probably going to be very active in the trade deadline here in coming weeks. That's a transition, ladies and gentlemen. So we have talked about the Jets obligatorily, and now we are back to go to the rest of the targets that we have here with the trade deadline discussion. So that's the Jets talk. Probably going to be bringing it back up here in the next week or 2, depending on certain results, to say the very least. So let's continue on the list. We spoke Davante Adams. Let's talk about another wide receiver here. Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. Poor Amari Cooper. For this dude is a talented wide receiver. He is legitimate. Like, he could be a stud on so many different teams. So many 1,000-yard seasons in his career. And from the Raiders and the short-term success, and by short-term I mean one good season that they had in his career when they were in Oakland, to being on the Cowboys, to being traded from the Cowboys because of the contract mismanagement on that squad, and now on the Browns, which last year he had a good year, man. He had a really good year, despite the fact that 17 different quarterbacks and the 3 of us were throwing him the football. He still put together a 1,000-yard campaign, helped the team get the team to the postseason. Last year of his deal, boys, I think that's a big one. The years following this one, from what I saw, are void years, and that's because of, when money gets moved around, converted, this, that, and the third. But relatively speaking, this is the last proper year of his contract from when he signed the extension years back. That makes it more valuable, right? Like, void years can be figured out. Payment can be made, whatever, like extension, maybe if you want to extend them by an extra year or 2. But Amari Cooper is an extremely valuable target, I feel, at this trade deadline. And maybe of the 3 receivers, depending on how much there is, like in terms of having to worry about costs, contract-wise, probably the least amount. So I'll throw it to you first, Rick. Amari Cooper, I know we didn't do this for Adams because we kind of talked so much about it already, but I think the 3 of us would agree we're probably at a 4 or 5 in terms of him being traded. Rick, quick trade rating on Cooper and thoughts about him.
Cleveland's a mess, man. And this is also, I just want to say, this is the flip side of one of my vaunted talking points, is that I always say when you draft a kid out of Alabama in the first round, it's going to disappoint you. Well, this is the other side of it. You could draft a kid out of Alabama, and he could be really good, but the football gods will knock you down 5 picks because you made that decision to draft a kid out of Alabama in the first round. That's Amari Cooper. He's a phenomenal talent. Even though he's 30 now, and he's maybe a little bit, couple steps behind now than he was when he came in, he's still a phenomenal talent. No question about it in my mind. I put this at a 3 or a 4, maybe a high 3 for the trade, because I just don't know what Cleveland is doing. I really have no clue, because they're still riding with Deshaun Watson, even though that is the worst mistake that you can make, aside from using canola oil in a massage parlor instead of regular oils. Just saying. But it doesn't make any sense to me why you would keep him. I know that they reworked the contract this summer, but even then he was still very unhappy about it. And now they're 1-4. And going into this week, well, let's be honest here. I think they're the biggest underdog going into this week, thanks to our friends at ESPN Bet. And so I feel like this is a case where he's going to want out, and there are teams that are going to want him, but Cleveland might be stubborn enough to say, nah, we're going to keep you. Or we want this high of a price for him. We want 2 number ones for Amari Cooper. We want a number 1 and a number 2, and your firstborn son. It's just like, I don't know what Cleveland's doing, and that's what scares me. If Cooper were to be traded, where could he go? If I had to really think about it, and I really had to kind of press in my mind as to what would make sense for him, what spot to go to, I don't even know. I mean, the Jets could use him because, Mike Williams ain't doing jack. And so, could you imagine having Garrett Wilson and Amari Cooper as your 1 and your 2? Sure, Lazard's relegated to 3, but that's a pretty good 1 and 2. The Giants could use him too, because Neighbors might be out for a bit. That would be a good spot for him to fold too. I don't even know. I would say the Falcons, but Mooney and Hodge have become real targets for Cousins, so probably not. Maybe a Cowboys reunion in the offing. That could be hilarious. But, I don't know where I see a clear fit, because I don't know if Cleveland's going to pull the trigger. Because the Haslams just annoy me to no end. And their GM, great guy, but taking cues from the guys the family that owns those random truck stops and the Bucks now, apparently. I don't know. Maybe you can trade to the Bucks. Maybe you have Giannis and Amari Cooper as your 2 forwards. I don't know. But I don't know. Like I said, I think it's a 3 or 4. They should move on because Cleveland's not going anywhere this season. But it's Cleveland, man. It's the Browns. And therefore, I think they'd be stubborn enough just to keep them just because they think they have some delusion of grandeur. They can still win this division. Let me tell you, they can't win this division at all. Sorry.
Yeah, the Bengals probably have a better chance than them, if we're being honest, because Deshaun Watson is just like
the Canton Bulldogs of 1920 have a better chance than the Browns.
Fair. No, it's one of those things where I have it at a 4 real quick before I throw it to Justin. Look, Amari Cooper is supremely talented, 5-time Pro Bowler. Last year was his career high in receiving yards, and the year before that was his career high in receiving touchdowns. He's talented, to say the very least. And I very much hope that he is on a new team, because this Cleveland Browns team is just bad. This is bad, man. So I'm going to put my rating at a 4. I think he should be traded again. You look at all the factors, he could walk after this year. His money to me is more manageable than Adams. Like you mentioned, there's not a clear definitive one trade target for him, because so many teams could use a guy like an Amari Cooper. And when you consider the ease of what it would take to maybe get him, maybe the package would be a little bit, would cost a little bit more than Adams, which is, I know it's funny to say, but you consider the money aspect of it. Is it almost worth it? I ask yourself the question. We mentioned the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs earlier with Adams. I think those 3 teams could very much also be in the conversation for a guy like an Amari Cooper as well. And you add an Amari Cooper to any of those 3 teams, there is fear in the AFC, to say the very least. So there's that. So that's my quick thing on Cooper. Justin, we'll throw it to you before we move on to the last of the wide receivers on this list. You're muted.
That's true. I was muted. I guess it really depends on how you view Cleveland, because going into this year, you wanted to think that they were a playoff caliber team. And I guess it's not impossible for them to turn it around. But if you look at their schedule, this was supposed to be the easy part, really. They lost to the Cowboys, fine. The only team they had beaten was Jacksonville, and I believe they scored a defensive score in that game. Then they lost to the Giants, the Raiders, and the Commanders. And now, given some of these teams are obviously surpassing expectations this year, but they haven't scored more than 18 points. 18 points is their season high this year. This is a guy who all of a sudden is wasting away in mediocrity. He's got 200 yards this year, I guess, but it's been rough. And the quarterback play has been just awful. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm Cleveland, I'm thinking of a hard reset right now. I mean, obviously, this Deshaun Watson trade was probably the worst trade in NFL history. Um, I'm thinking, I'm a little upset that he got off of that lawsuit and I could have maybe gotten out of that money. We went out and we traded for Jerry Jeudy this year. And I mean, he's leading the league, he's leading the team in receptions, but I mean, in receiving yards, but by 4. Like, it's not like he's doing all that much better. He's about the same as Amari Cooper. And we're not doing anything. We're not scoring any points. We're not running the ball well. Our offense stinks. So they're going to have to think about a hard reset on offense. Their next 4 games are against good defense. Their next 6 games are against good teams or good defensive teams. They have the Eagles in Philly, the Bengals at home, the Ravens at home, the Chargers at home, and then they're in New Orleans, which even if Derek Carr is not playing, that's still a strong defense. And then they have the Steelers. Oh, then they have the Broncos and then the Steelers again. They have no
going.
It's like you said, this was the easiest part of their schedule, and they came out of it 1-4.
I mean, maybe they win in that Chargers game or maybe the Saints game, but I mean, do we see them beating the Bengals, who are arguably the best offense in the league, even though they had a rough start? I don't think so. Do we see them beating the Ravens? I don't think so. The Steelers? No. That's 6 of their games. They haven't played a divisional game yet. That's 6 more games. Yep. They also play the Chiefs. The Dolphins, Tua might be back at that point. The Broncos have shown that they're a defensive powerhouse.
Yep.
The Saints, the Eagles coming off a bye, and the Chargers. That's it. That's the entire schedule. How many wins do you see there?
Maybe 5 or 6 total.
Amari Cooper's 30 years old, maybe 31 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Why are you holding on to this? I don't think Amari Cooper is there while you are a winning team. So in my mind, that's the balance. Either you want guys that you can win with, or you want to move guys that are good enough to get you pieces to win later. And since you're not winning with them, might as well see what you can get for them. Yep. The issue is a lot of those trade targets are going to be in division.
Yeah.
Teams that need receivers, Steelers, the Ravens. Those are the 2 of the big names that people have mentioned. The Jets are another team that people have mentioned. The Chiefs are another team that people have mentioned.
Yep. I'm sure also someone in the NFC could come out of the woodwork, perhaps for one of these deals.
These are you know really who I'm seeing, who I'm hearing a lot about that's a possible player? Commanders.
The Commanders too. Although I don't necessarily know if they need a receiver. They might need some secondary help.
I mean, they got rid of Dotson though, so
We will get to secondary here in a moment because the remaining names are defensive on this list of 7 players. But one more man. We'll go through this one real quick. Everyone's favorite wide receiver number 1, Christian Kirk, is listed on this on this post. The third and final wide receiver here. Year 3 into his 4-year deal, he originally signed with Jacksonville. And year 1 of that deal, he was great. Over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, 8 touchdowns, 84 catches. Christian Kirk was this show's wide receiver 1 in 2022. Then he hasn't really been that ever since. Like a rough year last year, in part because of the Lawrence injuries. In 12 games, he had 787 yards, which, to be fair, if he had played a full 17-game season, he'd get 1,000 yards again. And this year, he's having a decent year, but it's clear that the Jacksonville Jaguars offense is maybe slowly shifting away from him. He's second on the team in receiving yards, to be fair. But Brian Thomas Jr. is absurd with the long balls between him and Lawrence. So it's very much one of those things where you could see it go either way. I was a little bit shocked to see his name on this post, and that's why for me, I'm actually only going to give this a 2. I think because he is second on the team in yards right now, they need to figure things out with Trevor Lawrence. You still have another year after this. I don't know or see if there's any real rhyme or reason for them to need to get rid of Christian Kirk, unless maybe if they're thinking he might only be worth so much and a team is like, hey, we'll give you a 3rd. I don't know. Maybe is that enough to dissuade Jacksonville? I don't know, but I put it as a 2. I don't know if the Jags will move on from him just because I think that team needs to be more focused on keeping this club together right now and trying to salvage a lost season if possible, but maybe I'm wrong. Justin, your quick thoughts on Captain Christian Kirk?
I wouldn't trade him. I agree with you. I think that keeping him there is important because, I mean, as much as they're paying him, he is an excellent number 2 receiver in my mind. And that's what he is with Brian Thomas Jr. there. I mean, at least that's the way he should be. The running game finally got going last week. It was more Tank Bigsby than Travis Etienne, but that's not a huge issue as long as they're getting those yards on the ground. It's not like Etienne had a bad game either. I think they are probably going to have an easier time getting going than Cleveland. I mean, their schedule actually lightens up a little bit. I have the Bears, who do have a winning record now, but they probably should still win against. I know you are what your record says you are, but let's face it. They beat the Bears here, they beat the Patriots here, and all of a sudden they're 3-4. And I'm not saying they're looking at a playoff spot, but they're not looking so bad. I mean, they still play the Titans twice. They still play the Colts again. They were, a breath away from beating the Texans. That's always a close divisional game. They play the Jets, who don't look like they're getting any better anytime soon. And they play the Raiders at the end of the year. So, I mean, yes, they have some NFC North issues they're going to have to struggle with, but those are NFC games. I still think that they have the ability to turn this thing around. I'm not sitting here saying they're going to be a playoff team, but they have what it takes to be a powerhouse offensively, and I think they have the pieces defensively to stay in games. Not the best defense, but to stay in games. So I'm not necessarily selling on this team yet. It was a rough start. It is not what you want, but I think there's pieces there.
Yeah, Justin, I'm with you. I think for me, if I'm the Jaguars, I look at this trade market and I look at who wants a receiver. And the options for them, I think, would be Baltimore and Kansas City. And I'm not helping either of those teams out. So, but you're right. I feel like the AFC South is one of those divisions that can flip on its head at any given time. The Jaguars are still right there. I mean, the Texans have been impressive, but I think you saw that CJ Stroud is more susceptible now to that sophomore slump. So they could drop some more games here or there. They shouldn't. The Colts, God, who knows what's going to happen with Anthony Richardson at this point because, I think he's back this week, but should he be back? I don't know. They don't have Pittman, so they could fall off a little bit. They don't have Taylor either. And then the Titans are the Titans. They could be looking to offload DeAndre Hopkins at any point in time too. And not only he's on this list, but I mean, he's another guy that could be. So I would hold on to him. I would hold on to Kirk at this point. You're right. With Brian Thomas and with Gabe Davis there, they still have a vaunted offense. And if they can get Evan Ingram going, that would be huge for them too. And I think Trevor Lawrence will ride himself. And you're right. This defense is good. They're not elite, but they're good enough to keep you in games. And if it comes down to offense, I'd rather see this Jaguars team kind of keep all their weapons to see what they can make out of it. So I go at a low 2, high 1 for this. I don't think the Jaguars should make this trade. And I think that, at least give it, if you're going to consider it, give it until you're back from London. So give it the next 2 weeks. If Kirk can play well in London and they can take these games, and that would be the Bears and the Patriots, I believe, that would be, will they be 3-4 at that point? That's a lot better than where they are right now. And so, again, you win these 2 games, you see how the rest of the division unfolds, and who knows, you might be a game out of first place, depending on how the Texans fare, or you might be a game and a half out, or 2 games, whatever it is. You still got a long season to go if you're the Jaguars. So I don't think you trade them.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think there's any real rhyme or reason on the Jags end to want to make this deal happen, which I could kind of say for the opposite side of things on this list, because the player, before we get to the 3 members of the secondary, there's 1 pass rusher on this list, on this post. I don't know if anyone would want to trade for him. Von Miller.
Mm-hmm.
He has 3 years.
Somebody who would.
He has 3 years left on his deal after this season.
Yeah, but he's not playing.
Yes.
No,
yeah, so
he's out until week 8 because of his suspension.
So he was suspended for multiple games. So he's almost, you can almost kind of say he's going to be the Bills' own trade deadline acquisition if he just ends up coming back and playing for them. But like this is very interesting. Like ever since they signed him, it's been tough with Vaughn because of the injury that he ended up suffering. That took out, like, he was just ineffective last year, essentially, right? And they lost him in the back half of the 2022 season. Like, this guy, again, 6-year, $120 million contract was what he originally signed. has converted a couple times the last couple of years, like certain salary into bonuses and other things to try to help out the team. Didn't have a lot of guaranteed money on the original deal, from what I'm seeing, and the dead cap in 2025 would be tough, but would be lesser in 2026 and 2027. So I guess that's maybe something for a team to want to consider, but I almost want to lean towards like a 2 or even a 1 in this case, because I don't see I could maybe see an argument of why the Bills might want to try to trade this deal, depending on how much they would have to pay for the rest of the season, maybe next year. But what team will be wanting to? I mean, cap gymnastics are cap gymnastics. You always have to do them every single year. That's what you hire the capologist for. But what team is going to want to make this trade? I'm not sure. But the Podfather apparently does. So before I give my rating, Rick, you give yours, because you have a team in mind for Von.
I have two actually in mind that I'm thinking of now. So I'm going to go with 3 for this. Atlanta, because they only have 5 sacks this year, even though they signed Matthew Judon. They need more help in that middle linebacker core. I think Von Miller playing in Atlanta might be beneficial for him. And the other name is San Francisco, because Gross Matos is out for 4 to 6 weeks, maybe longer. They need somebody to help plug up that middle. And Von Miller, when he comes back, can still be that guy. So I think you're right. Cap gymnastics aside, I think that Buffalo might want to hold on to him because they don't have Matt Milano. So, but their defense isn't that bad. Greg Rousseau has been pretty good this year. And so I feel like if you think you can get away with Rousseau and Oliver and those guys, I think Miller's a valuable chip to move. And I think those 2 options, Atlanta or San Francisco, they would be willing to pay pretty. I think they'd be willing to split. I know Arthur Blank is very good at making money moves like that. And look, the Niners need somebody. And so if Von Miller's available, they're going to pick him up. I mean, didn't they do that with Chase Young last year? Didn't they get him at the deadline? I know it's different, but like they're willing to make a move for somebody that they think can help their team out. And who's to say Von Miller can't help their team out?
Well, they literally did it with Von Miller at one point. But that was different. They were a different team, one. And they were also it was a 1-year deal for a much younger, productive player. Yep. Now you have a multi-year deal for an older, suspended player for a lot of money. You're going to have to do some cap gymnastics, which you already have to do with this team. It's just, I don't see it for the Niners.
Do you see in general the trade happening, Justin, for the Bills and Von Miller, or do you think it's going to be a case where maybe they'll just want to keep him?
I don't know what team is taking on that contract. Honestly, it didn't seem like a good contract at the time. That first year was good for them. He got injured last year. And, I mean, situationally, he's been okay. But this is exactly where everyone thought this was going to go. This is not a good contract. This is an aging player who's got injury concerns now, can't play. He's only really a third down guy now, and also he's suspended for character issues. Who's taking that? Who wants that distraction?
I mean, teams have shown before, but no, I do get your point. And this was a deal that when it was signed by the Bills those years ago before the 2022 season, signed to a 6-year deal, you could clearly tell the thought in mind was that the expectation was win within the first 3 years of the deal, and then you just deal with whatever the last 3 years is, because we won, it doesn't matter, right? Like a championship ring absolves all wounds. You signed a bad contract, you won the championship when that contract was still good. It's fine. You made a trade that's sacrificed picks, and those picks maybe became decent players, and we won a championship after we traded those picks, right? Bills are not in that position. There is no championship to be had right now, and that's why I'm saying I'm leaning towards a 1 or a 2. And I'm guessing Justin is in the same boat as me, where it's just like, don't really see it happening in this situation for like, that's why I say it's kind of the other way, where I think it's in the case with the Kirk idea, I think the Jags more so want to keep him. I think with the Von Miller thing, I don't know what.
It's not that they don't want to get rid of him. It's that how are you going to get rid of that?
Exactly. Like, and it would take a lot, I think, and barely taking anything back as well, right? Like, it's just one of those situations where I just don't see it happening at all. So relatively low scores all around for that one. Let's get to these last 3 players, because these last 3 players, I think this is where the conversation starts to pick up a little bit. We might get some higher scores here. J.C. Horn is the 5th player listed here. We have 3 secondary guys here, 2 corners, and 1 safety. J.C. Horn of the Carolina Panthers is listed here. Now, we know the Carolina Panthers have had no issue trading players over the last couple of years. They traded Christian McCaffrey. They've traded Brian Burns. They lost Jeremy Chin in free agency. J.C. Horn was one of those guys where it's like, had such high expectations of him coming out of college. And there have been glimpses that you hope that he could put it together. And there have just been some injury issues for him early on in his career where he has not gotten to play as many games. He only got to play 3 games in his rookie campaign, which it was looking like to be a really good year for him, right? He had an interception early on, was looking to be like the number 1 corner of the future for the Panthers. Then he gets hurt. 2022 plays closer to a full season, 3 interceptions that year. Like, again, looking really good. Then 2023 only plays a handful of games. Like, it's just been rough stuff. His 5th-year option was picked up. So there is that to consider, that you have a player going into a 5th-year option. Are you going to consider an extension? But this is such a young guy who still has so much promise and talent. And we all know what's going to happen. He's going to leave Carolina, and he's going to have the cleanest bill of health of all time, because that's just what's going to happen to the Carolina Panthers. So, Justin, I'll throw it to you first. Trade probability for J.C. Horn and spots where he could go for himself if he were to get traded.
He's still so young. That's the issue. I mean, as much as I want to say, yeah, he's a trade candidate, Carolina's terrible. You know my philosophy on this. I said it with Amari Cooper. Is this guy going to be here when we're going to be good, and can he contribute to a victory? If not, is it worth, can we get the assets back so that we can contribute to a winning roster? And the answer on that one, I would say, is probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, he's a guy that could be there if you want to win a championship. And as rough as that has been in Carolina, I don't think defense is the issue. So I think if you could sit there and you could say, I'm going to sign him to a long-term deal and it's worth the cap space and we'll figure out the quarterback and the rest of the roster at some point, then I'm not trading him. It's hard to get players of that caliber. As much as you want to trade them for assets, those draft picks are lottery tickets. This is a guy who can play. I don't think I'm trading him.
The question, though, becomes, will he have a Brian Burns issue where he'll kind of, hold out because the Panthers aren't that good of a team? That's the issue. So it's a double-edged sword. He's 24. He's a great player. You want to keep him, make him the cornerstone of that defense. But if you hold on to him and your team's not that good, will he stay? And then you'll lose him for nothing. So I can see this being a trade possibility if the Panthers are terrible, which they are, but worse than they currently are. And I think the viable option for them is Minnesota. Gilmore's been great for them, and Shaq Griffin's been really good. But Byron Murphy, while he's been good this year, leads all corners in yards allowed and missed tackles, according to Pro Football Focus. It might be better just to have somebody else in there, too, to kind of shore that up. And the Vikings are a surprise right now. So if I'm Minnesota, I look at all these options that are here, and I say, what's going to make us better? Because right now we have an opportunity to keep this surprise run going. Because let's be honest here, they're 5-0. I had them at 4-13. They outperformed my expectations, which doesn't say much, but it's something. So if they want to keep this going, they have to at least get bodies in there to help shore up some spots. I know cornerback isn't really high up on their priority, but it has to be, because they're going to fight teams down the stretch for relevancy, and why not? To Justin's point, if you can keep him in Carolina, do it. Throw whatever money you want at him, make him the guy, make him the cornerstone of that defense, pay him as such, and then he'll stay. But what do we know about this Carolina ownership group? They don't like to do that, do they? And so it's like if you give David Tepper a choice between the chicken and the egg, he'll go for a foxhole for some reason because he thinks it's funny, So I agree with Justin. I say Minnesota's an option if they do decide to trade him. But I think you do what you can to keep him. And if you lose him in free agency afterwards, so be it. You'll get, I guess, a compensatory pick afterwards. But then turn into like a third-round kid from Lenore Ryan or whatever. But, at the same time, it's something. So,
yeah. I'm leaning towards the 2 here because I think, unlike what most situations are, I think Carolina is going to make a concerted effort to actually keep him. I would love for him to get traded only because I would like for him to be on a better team and to show those flashes. And he'd probably end up healthier on another team. Like I said, just everything's better when you leave just a bad organization. But I think it's going to end up being a case, as much as we make the David Tepper jokes. And maybe if David Tepper wakes up next Tuesday and he decides to trade J.C. Horn will be traded. But it's probably going to be, he's going to be locked in to be the Carolina Panthers' future franchise cornerback going forward. And hopefully do something and stay healthy in Carolina, to say the very least. Because like Justin said, like in terms of a guy getting healthy here soon enough, like he's only going to turn 25 during the season. Like this kid has a lot of NFL future left still. So we'll see very much. I like this list, J.C. Horn, like I feel like he should be swapped for another player. Because I just think like the likelihood that he stays in Carolina is extremely high. So
yeah, but I don't think they wanted to put 2 members of the Browns on there because I think Greg Newsome could be a guy who's an option. But then why kick Cleveland when they're down?
True, but then for me, honestly, a guy who came to mind while I was like also trying to search up other names was Tre'Davious White. I think Tre'Davious White, the Rams season's going nowhere. That's very much a guy that could be traded. Not going to get a lot back for him, but Tre'Davious White, maybe he finds form with another team to end off the season. Good decent playoff run if they could get there.
True.
Revive his career. So that's where my swap would have come in. And I think probably the 3 of us would agree Tre'Davious White, fair chance he's going to get moved here at the deadline. Well, let's go to the last 2 names here. The last of the 2 corners and the middle of the secondary. Darius Big Play Slay is on this list, ladies and gentlemen. Look, the Eagles for the last couple of years, their defense has been relatively good. It's been tougher to start this season, and one of the reasons it's been tougher because there have just been times where that defense was carved in critical moments. I think the number one thing we're all thinking of is the Falcons game, right? And Kirk Cousins just marching down the field, being clutch Kirk, and ultimately downing the Eagles. And it has not been the easiest of campaigns for Philly to start this 2024 season. And even the secondary itself has kind of been a question for this team the last couple of years because Darius Slay and also James Bradbury have been 2 guys that like there have been times where they have played absolutely phenomenal, right? When it came to it. But there have also been times where it's like, you kind of question what's going to happen. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I could have sworn this past offseason there was at least a rumor, was there not, that Slay wanted out of Philly, or they were mulling over if there were any offers for him?
No, I think it was last year that they had brought that up. I think this year might have been some more conjecture, but last year I know Howie Roseman was looking to move him before the season even started.
Yeah, there was an issue with the contract. He wanted to be paid more, and then they weren't going to pay him. And then he said he demanded a trade, I believe.
I think so.
I want to be here, but if you're not going to pay me, send me somewhere where I'm going to be paid what I deserve.
Yeah.
And now we have a situation here where, like, so we're seeing it now. March 2023. He did get the last year of his deal restructured, and then got a 2-year extension added onto it. So I believe this year is the first of that extension, or maybe it's the last of it. But Darius Slay, we know he's been called big play for a reason. He's made some big plays. He can get interceptions in big moments. But this Philly team has just not looked great in multiple aspects. And that defense is it's really underperformed. And if you want proof of that, Devin White getting cut from this team, the downfall of the 2 Devins, Devin Bush and Devin White, after their rookie campaigns is, it's a joke on the internet now. It's an overused joke of the downfall of such and such needs to be studied or whatever. But there actually does need to be something there because both Devin Bush and Devin White, just it's crazy. But what do we think here, boys? Rick, I'll talk to you first. Darius Slay, is he going to finish this season out with the Philadelphia Eagles here? I'm kind of torn on this because I could see the argument of keeping him because you keep a veteran on a veteran laden team that wants to win, but they also have some young corners waiting in the wings to take on a bigger role. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, this is the one where I'm really torn too because there's literally no middle ground on this Eagles secondary because it's Darius Slay, who's 33 years old, and then the rest of the guys are all like mid-20s. There's maybe one player who's like an upper 20, but do you think Avonte Maddox is going to be like a guy? I don't know. I feel like the Eagles are going to get creative with this one. I put this at a 1. My reasoning is because Bradbury's on the IR, they still need some sort of veteran presence in the defensive backfield. And I think Slay, for everything that he is, he's still a guy who can be that veteran leader. Because I don't think, guys like Ringo and Ricks and Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are there yet. Obviously, Mitchell and DeJean were just drafted, so they're not close. But Ricks and Ringo, they're not ready to go. And I don't think Reed Blankenship, while he's a very good safety, I don't think he's ready either. I feel like the Eagles, once you get past Slay, if you don't really follow football that much, might not know those names because they're kind of like just there. But I feel like in this instance, Darius Slay is a known name and a known veteran presence and somebody who I think can hold the glue together. If the Eagles start trailing off, maybe you could see it. But I feel like they're more inclined to add a flyer than they are get rid of Darius Slay. I feel like they're a team that, for whatever reason, they could lose their next 3 or 4 games and still be buyers at the trade deadline for somebody in the secondary if they wanted to. They might add a Tre'Davious White or a Greg Newsome if they think that that's going to help them fit. I don't think Slay's leaving. If he was to go, it wouldn't surprise me. And it's interesting because I know the last name on the list, but I feel like that team might need him more if they're looking to trade somebody. So I feel like, because the Cardinals, I feel like, are a little bit closer than people expect, and that division is in flux.
Yeah,
the West. So they could come out of this like totally on the edge if they wanted to. But I don't think there's going to be a creativity with it, and so I think that he stays in Philadelphia. I don't feel so confident in it, but I'm going to say he stays.
No, I don't blame you, and I think you put it out there. I think with some of the trades on some of the guys on this list, it's just circumstances that are going to keep it there. And you look at the circumstances for a lot of these players on this list, and we're going to get to the last one here in a moment. It's like, is it logical for this trade to happen right now? And it probably doesn't make a lot of sense. If James Bradbury was actually healthy, I could actually see this trade happening, because you still have that veteran there that could be the guy where Quinion Mitchell, who's gotten to play a lot, because of Bradbury going down, and Avonte Maddox there is a 28-year-old. Like, I think there's the depth there if they were healthy to want to consider making the move, but they're not. And that's ultimately going to be why Darius Slay is probably going to finish out this year. But I think this Eagles team, man, like, I think there's a little bit of shuffling last. There's going to be some legit roster reconstructing that goes on with this team in going into 2025, because they had the early bye week, if I'm not mistaken, unless a complete turnaround of form happens for the squad, like, do we expect them to make a big run here in the second half? Like, they'll win some games. They're probably going to make the postseason, right? They seem too talented on paper not to, but are they really going to make a giant run of form? I don't know. And you got to look at the defense, man. Whether it's been in moments or just total things, it's like this defense has not performed up to standard in 2024. So there's that. Justin, your take before we move on to the last player on this list.
I think they're too far along to be trading. I think Rick's right. I think that they are, while they've been disappointing a little bit this year, I think that they are buyers at the trade deadline, if anything.
Agreed. So I would say we're all likely at a 1 there in that regard. Last player. Probably also at a 1 here because, like Rick mentioned, this team has surprised us. And we're going to talk about the Thursday night football game that happened in division real quick before we finish out the show. Budda Baker of the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this is a guy that, going back to last season, really, it's felt like there have been rumors, because Budda Baker, a supremely talented player, has been a staple of the Cardinals for a bit now. And going back to last year, people wanting him to be traded because it's the typical talented player. He should be on another team. He leads the Cardinals in tackles. He is just such a key piece to the secondary. For as long as he's been in the league since 2017. He's only 28 years old. Like, still relatively young. Has had a lot of good seasons under his belt. Pro Bowl caliber player, all pro caliber safety, really. He's just one of those guys where it feels like 10 years from now, when his career is finished, it's like people are going to make reels of like how good a guy was, and like people kind of forgot about it. And like Budda Baker might be one of those guys where he's just on like a middling team for so many years of his career. I think he's only 2 playoff appearances since he's been with the Cardinals. So there's that. But likelihood of him being traded, Justin, I'm kind of thinking this might be another guy on this list. This was not that great of a list by CBS Sports. We expect better CBS Sports, but this is probably a guy that it's not, we don't see the trade happening, because like you said logically, and I think Rick has kind of atoned to it, where it's like, that just doesn't make sense unless management completely decides to 180 things, right? It doesn't make sense to trade Budda Baker right now.
I want to say that it does because I think Carolina is. I'm Carolina. I think Arizona is exactly where I thought they would be, in which they are a good young team, but they're not there yet. But Buda Baker is young enough to keep around for a while. I know he just signed his first contract extension, if I'm not mistaken. And they're exactly where we thought they'd be in this schedule. I mean, maybe the losses aren't the same. I think we all thought they'd beat the Commanders and lose to the Niners, but they're still 2-3. And let's say they lose this week to the Packers at 2-4. They play the Chargers in Arizona, in Miami, home against the Bears, home against the Jets. There's no reason that this team shouldn't win maybe all 4 of those games, So at that point, yeah, they're buyers at that deadline. They need a lot of different things, and maybe they're buyers on one or two of these players we were talking about because they could use another receiver. Can you imagine adding Amari Cooper to that receiving core? That'd be something.
Yeah.
So I think they probably end up keeping him. I don't think they're sellers as of yet, but I'm interested to see where they're going to be in 3 weeks.
Yeah, tentative buyer status if you're Arizona. And we talked about multiple NFC West team. Well, we talked about NFC West maybe seeing only one of the wild card spots. Maybe it'll be more than one, or maybe it will just be one, and it's not the NFC West team that we thought would get the wild card spot, not the Bird team. We'll get to that here in a moment. Rick, your final thoughts. You'll close it out first because I agree with everything Justin said.
Yeah, I mean, on the converse side of it, to what Justin's saying, if the Cardinals beat the Packers, then they're 3-3, and it's a 3-way tie for first place. And you could argue that next week they might have the best chance out of all of those 3 teams to win that game and go to 4-3, because next week is Seattle at Atlanta and Kansas City at San Francisco. And the Cardinals play Monday night against the Chargers. So you could argue that they could be 4-3. And look, it's a lead in the division that you didn't think you'd have. And Buda Baker's been the best defensive player that they've had. He's leading the team in tackles. He's constantly around the ball wherever it needs to go. He's a solid player. He's a great player. And I feel like with this GM and coach tandem, with Gannon and Ossenfort there, it's a much better situation for him than it was when Steve Keim was there and Cliff Kingsbury was there too. It's a much better situation. It's less tense, I feel like, for him. This is a team that is clicking. Look, Kyler's been very good, and the offense has been solid. The defense, again, Baker's leading that charge. And because of how the Niners and the Seahawks specifically haven't run away with this division yet, even though Seattle started 3-0 and they've come back to earth, I would say, the fact of the matter is that this is still a sneaky Cardinals team that could surprise some people, and that wouldn't surprise me. I picked them to be a wildcard team, so there you go. But, yeah, if it all goes south, then yes, because, look, Baker's been looking to be traded for a bit, but I think he's, giving this a shot. He's playing like a man possessed. Like, he wants that next big contract from somewhere, and I feel like he's playing in a way that he could make his way to a good team if this doesn't go anywhere. But the Cardinals might be going somewhere, man, especially with how they've been hitting on all cylinders. So it's low for me. I don't have a trade destination in mind for him because I'd like to see him stay in Arizona and maybe have the Cardinals surprise a lot of people. So I think that this is a 1. This might be close to a 0 for me, I would think.
Yeah, and again, this could be a team that gets aggressive come the trade deadline. If they're 4-3 and have a chance, we could see this team make a big move. Like you guys mentioned, receiver. Imagine adding a bona fide pass rusher to this team to really lead that squad as well. Like this,
how about a great offensive lineman as well? Because I know they just lost Will Hernandez, right? So that could be a really good option for them.
Yeah, this is a Cardinals team to watch out for come the trade deadline. They might be a sneaky contender to make some moves here, and in a season where just like the good teams kind of have flaws in them. There's no real MVP candidate right now, right? Like, does this not feel like the latest in a season where we haven't had a bona fide MVP candidate going into week 6?
Well, I mean, if you have some people, Mahomes is still an MVP candidate. So yeah.
Well, yeah, 6 interceptions. 6 interceptions would say otherwise, but
yeah,
it's very interesting. So we'll see there. But no, this is very interesting. So that wraps up this list from CBS Sports. In conclusion, make a better list, CBS Sports.
Do better.
Do better. Put more names that we could actually see being dealt. Because honestly, if we're talking about trade, like right now, if we just came up with names between the three of us, I said Tre'Davious White earlier. DeAndre Hopkins, what is there for him to want to do in Tennessee? Amari Cooper is a decent name on this thing, but like
Azeez Ojulari for the Giants is another option too.
Yep. Is I forget what the deal it was that he signed with them, but it's Darius Smith in Cleveland.
Yep.
Like pass rusher right there.
Yep.
Come on now. Like boom. We just came up with a 4-player list like that.
You know who else is a candidate? Bryce Young could be a candidate.
hey. Did I not start the conversation? Come on,
exactly.
Somewhere.
Exactly.
Justin heard that somewhere on the show.
Yes.
So that concludes our analysis of this trade list from CBS Sports and our quick own trade list. We'll probably revisit the trades the last show before the deadline as a quicker segment next time. So before we get to the end of the show here, which I know the people are all waiting for, real quick, boys, any notes on the Thursday night duel between the Seahawks and the 49ers as we are moving on to this thing? San Fran won the game 36-24. It was a game where they built up a healthy lead, relatively speaking, 23-3, excuse me. And then Seattle started to threaten a little bit. But it ended all for naught because George Kittle and then Kyle Juszczyk end up clinching the game. So there's that.
I worry about this Niners rushing attack because McCaffrey
running back.
Well, yeah, I mean McCaffrey we know is out for at least another month or another few weeks, and Jordan Mason went down day to day with an AC joint sprain. Now look, Isaac Guerrero was great as a spell guy, but now you're on your third running back, and you've got some tough games coming up if you're the Niners. The passing attack was great, but I think did Seattle lose somebody too? I thought Seattle lost Woolen in this game for a little bit. I think he went down with some sort of an injury. He might have come back, but there was a period of time where I saw that he wasn't on the field, and so that's a tough investment there. But look, here's the bottom line with it. This is the ebb and flow of the season. Like Seattle started off really well, 3-0. Got lucky in some cases because they were playing a rookie quarterback. They won an overtime game, and then they were playing a Tualess Miami. And following that up, 42 points against the Lions they allowed. The Giants beat them, which is, something. And then this was a short week. So this is they're back down to earth. What it does is it kind of makes me a little more concerned about Seattle than I think certain people on this podcast would like me to be, especially about that guy who's under center. But also, Seattle's rushing attack was nowhere to be found in this game. I get they abandoned it very early when they were down by a lot, but Kenneth Walker only had 32 yards rushing, and Charbonnet only had 20. Like Geno threw the ball 52 times. Like they abandoned that run so fast, they were not able to have a multi-dimensional offense, and that even though they were creeping back in, they were never really in this game at the very end. So disappointing for the Seahawks. The Niners survived another injury, actually two of them, right? Because Jake Moody's been out for a bit. I know Matthew Wright had a good game, but that's a big guy to miss. Moody's a great kicker. So yeah. Poor both these teams.
Now there's a lot to be concerned about. There needs to be a play style change very quick in Seattle. Like as much as I will, bang the drum for the Ring of Honor case for Geno Smith, it's one of those things where I don't know if you're going to win too many games where he has to throw the ball that much. So
DK was targeted 11 times in this game.
That's wild.
And had 3 catches.
He struggles against some of the NFC West teams, man. Like he really does. He's had bad games against the Rams, particularly when Jalen Ramsey was there. Like Jalen Ramsey is just like he has had DK Metcalf's number on multiple occasions.
Yep.
He struggled against San Francisco. I guess he does relatively well against the Cardinals, but it's just like there's something with the division games. Like DK Metcalf just doesn't always have his best performances.
Right.
Makes sense. You see a guy twice a year. You see him for so many years that you kind of figure out some of the tells with him. So there's that. Justin, any notes here before we move on?
Nope.
Let's move on to the main event of the program, ladies and gentlemen. The part of the show that we all love, the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge, where the three of us go throughout the league and pick games on a 4-point to 1-point basis, 4 with the most confidence, 1 being the least amount of confidence, as we compete and vie for the hashtag SAOC Pick Challenge Championship at the very end of the season. We must all pick at least one upset pick for ourselves when it comes to our analysis of the games of any given week. And those picks are brought to us by our friends at
ESPN Bet.
Yep. Must make one upset pick. It can be your 2 point at your lowest. If you want to go all 4 games being upset picks, have at it. But there must always be at least one of your first 3 picks being an upset pick, to say the very least. We can pick a tie if we want, but it must be used as our 4-pointer converted to 5. That being said, I think that's all the rules and ruminations that need to be. Podfather, standings update, and then make your first pick.
So we went in the last week with Jurg up by 4 points on Justin, 27-23. I had 18, and our mascot, who was taking the week off to go dig holes, had 14. We ended the week with Jurg getting just the 3-point game and the 1-point game correct. So Green Bay and Chicago helping him out. So he still is at 31. Justin had the 3 and the 2 correct. San Francisco kind of screwed you over because, it's the Niners. So you're at 28. The bigger story, though, is that with our 1-point Wheel of Chaos pick, the Gophers passed me by because he got a times 10 on his pick. And Denver was the pick and 1, so he's now at 24. I had, like Justin, the 3 and the 2. I had Kansas City and Washington. Lost my 4, lost my 1, so I'm at 23. So, again, behind the damn mascot. This is like 2022 all over again, basically, for me.
Rick, real quick, how many games does he have on tap this week in case I need to get the wheel ready? Okay, let me get the wheel ready.
Yeah. At least that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. 1. I have the first pick, and I went back and forth on it because I could have picked a game that I think would have made a lot of sense. But also in looking at my upsets for the week, there's only one that I really, truly like. And so it makes more sense for me to pick that game first, even though it's going to sacrifice a lot of the other games. It just makes more sense for me to do that. And so with that in mind, I'm going to pick, for my upset here, the Jaguars over the Bears in London. I think Jacksonville got that first win. They can turn it around here. This is Caleb Williams' first game outside of the country. So how will jet lag factor in? Other fun facts, Jacksonville, while they're 6-5 all-time in London, they're 2-0 at Tottenham. They're playing at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They have not lost a game in Tottenham. And so I think that will play to their advantage too. So it's a risky pick, but again, I don't like my other upsets, so I'm going Jaguars over Bears at 4 points.
Okay, nice. Justin, your 4-pointer.
I'm going to take Houston. I think that's the logical pick.
I was hoping you'd leave him.
Yeah, Rick, I love you, but I don't understand that you'd rather pick the Jaguars at 4 points than pick an upset you don't like.
Well, yeah, because the last time that I did that was the freaking Jets.
Well, stop picking the Jets. That's the answer.
But I have them as an upset pick this week
too. 1-4 Jacksonville at the 4-point pick against the 3-2 Bears, where defense travels, or Houston playing arguably the worst team in the league.
Well, I mean, that's true.
But guaranteed 4 points.
That's true. But, there's also that, like I said, there's that propensity for a sophomore slump, with also the unknown of Drake May being in his first NFL start.
You think that it's more likely the Jacksonville Jaguars win than the Houston Texans win?
I think last week gave him confidence. So I'm going that route.
Give that offense confidence, to say the least.
Why not?
All right, boys. My picks now, back-to-back to 4 and 3, because we go serpentine order. Whenever I say that, we get a view from John Gruden before he clicks off the show.
Yikes.
All right, I'm going to flip the double bird here. Give me Eagles, Falcons for my picks. Well, in reverse order. Falcons for my 4-pointer, Eagles for my 3-pointer. So there's that. I got to make a double bird joke. Very proud about that. So
birds.
Yes. So
I'm proud for you, Jerry.
Thank you. I 123 episodes in the making. So Falcons with my 4, Eagles with my 3.
Good on
I'm
you.
also going to pick a 1-4 team here, and that's going to be the top offense in the league right now. And Joe Burrow, he's going to. This is going to be a closer game than people think. I don't know if it's only a 3.5-point spread, because that Giants defense has played really well this year. I mean, that trade in the beginning of the year was monumental, as we said it would be. It's crazy when a pass rusher shows up what a team could do on defense. But I still think it's not enough. They don't have the horses to catch up with the Bengals, and I'm taking Cincinnati.
This is a perfect game for that Bengals defense because they've been bad.
Yeah, have been. All right, so I mean that upset pick would have stayed, but regardless, it's fine because I have my 3 and my 2 anyways. For a similar reason that Justin picked Houston over New England, I'm taking Tampa over New Orleans at 3. Spencer Rattler starting his first game is going to be rough. I'm sorry. I know they have Chris Olave. I know they're very good on offense, but this is going to be a challenge. And actually, I have the Bucs in another fantasy pool on defense, so I'm loving this matchup here for them. And then my 2-pointer, I'm going to pick along the same lines against the team that just made a quarterback change. Give me the Steelers over the Raiders at 2, because I think the Steelers defense is going to have a field day. They're going to make mincemeat out of Aiden O'Connell, I believe. And again, I don't know what Devontae Adams is playing because I know that he's got the hamstring. It's the phantom of the X-ray, I guess. But I mean, while Brock Bowers looked great, they did not win last week because 1 quarter doesn't give you a win. 4 quarters does. And that's how the Gophers one point ahead of me right now. So, I'll take Pittsburgh at my 2.
Listen, unlike Rick, I'm all for the rookie quarterbacks this week. And I'm going to pick the Denver Broncos to upset the Los Angeles Chargers. Look, you could say what you want about the offense. That defense is playing lights out. They have had a great year. And I do think that Chargers offense is still a little shaky. And there's just a little something off about them that I don't necessarily know how many points they're going to put up. And I expect the Broncos to be in good field position. I think Gus Edwards was out this week, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to hurt their running attack.
Reasonable.
Yeah. All right. For my picks, I'm going to go double upsets on my 2 and 1. I mean, the 2 has to be an upset either way, but I'll pick an upset for both. For my 2-point pick, give me the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joe Flacco, because Tennessee is favored going into this game, and I don't know why. So give me the Colts for my 2-point pick.
Indy's the underdog here because of no Pittman and no Taylor.
Pittman practice this week, though. He's not out yet.
I believe in Joe Flacco.
Taylor?
Taylor's out. Taylor's out for the week.
He's definitely out, yeah.
Pittman,
but he might be limited. He might be limited, I think.
I believe in Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's got this.
Joe Hendry?
I believe in Joe Flacco. There we are. God, we got 2 stupid jokes in this.
Yes, we did.
And I'll make life easier for the 2 Jets fans here. I will fall in the sword of sins here. I'll pick the Jets as a 1-point upset in this
You
one.
pick the Jets?
Boy.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Oh, my God. Why would you pick the Jets?
I want to know picking them this
I don't
season.
understand. People don't get it. They
I
don't
want to
learn.
know picking them.
It doesn't matter if you're a fan or not, jerk. You don't bet on Jets games.
I want to know picking them.
Don't. It's a mistake.
He is 1-0 picking them.
If they go 2-0 with me picking them, you should be begging me to make picks for them the whole rest of the season.
That's fair.
But the more you pick, double edge. The more you pick them and the more they win. Yes, it helps the Jets, but it also makes you further ahead, and that's the last thing we all want.
Jerk. You're gonna keep picking them, and they're gonna keep giving you right, and then you're gonna be like, you know what? I am on with the Jets. Let me bet some money, and then they're gonna screw you.
No, I'm not gonna bet money on this team.
Hold
on. I'll bet points.
They're gonna pump up your confidence. They're gonna do it for like 3 years. They're gonna be like, yeah.
Get your Bitcoin ready.
Get your Bitcoin ready.
Every pick time Jurek picks.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you're gonna lose like $5,000 and you're gonna be like, shit.
The worst thing. It's the worst thing.
I'm not
Don't bet $5,000.
Look, man. Look, I have a chance here. I'm pretty confident. If I imagine I get a 3rd perfect week to start this season, it's gonna be pretty good. It's gonna be pretty good for me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna pick what I think is a safer pick, and I don't believe anyone's picked them yet. Detroit.
Nope, that game's still open.
Hosting, going into Dallas. I think Dallas has been rough defensively, and I don't think they have the horses to keep up offensively. Lions coming off a bye. I think they should win that game.
I like it. I think it's a good pick there. I at one point will see, after all the goodwill that I had talking about Arizona, I'm not going to pick against them, even though I had Green Bay in my personal pick. So I'm going to take the other game. And I don't know, to me, this is a must-win for Baltimore on a couple different fronts. If you lose to Washington and the Commanders get to 5-1, that's embarrassing. Even though Jaden Daniels has been playing lights out.
So embarraing, yeah. They're offensively.
You lose the regional rivalry. I would say, that's somewhat embarrassing. But also But also, if they lose this game and they go to 3-3, and the Bengals beat the Giants, they're 2-4, they're a game back. The Steelers win. The Steelers will go to 4-2. You're kind of right back to where you started. And there's going to be a lot more questions about the John Harbaugh of it all that I think, you need to answer. So I will take Baltimore by 1 pointer. I think they need this win more. If Washington wins, dude, the Commanders will just be incredible. And with that in mind, Utah, our Gopher mascot, who I hate with a burning passion, is going Arizona over Green Bay for an upset pick plus the Wheel of Chaos.
The return of the Wheel of Chaos, ladies and gentlemen. Unintentionally sponsored by the random advertisements that pop up on this page every single time.
Yeah, I know. It's the
So we
worst.
get rid of the sponsors and let's spin the wheel.
It's 10x plus 1 again. I'm gonna get very angry. That
Just
might have been
say 11.
that was a really bad spin.
Did it even spin?
I don't think it. No, I think I gotta redo that.
You redo?
That was
Okay.
that was a really bad spin.
Okay, so
How does the
here,
electric wheel have a bad spin?
I don't know. No, because only it goes a lot longer, and that one was just like a,
here it is, ladies and gentlemen, from 1x to 10x plus 1, because some people don't like math.
That's the spin that we needed. That's a much better spin. It's fine. Times 5. So half of what it was last week, which is, fine.
So still very much a chance to catch Justin.
Yeah, with Ty Justin and Justin goes winless,
That'd be tough. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the pick challenge. Podfather, recap the picks for the people, and then let's get to the main event.
Certainly. Jurg, the leader in the clubhouse right now, your 4-point pick is the Atlanta Falcons. You are taking the Philadelphia Eagles at 3. We have birds and birds. The Colts at 2 points in an upset, and the Jets at 1 point in an upset. Yikes. Justin is going Houston at 4 points, Cincinnati at 3, Denver in an upset at 2, and Detroit at 1. Because the Gopher is ahead of me, his pick is Arizona with a 5 times optimizer. And then I am taking Jacksonville on my 4-point upset pick for the 9:30 in the morning game tomorrow. Lucky me. Tampa at 3, Pittsburgh at 2, and Baltimore at 1. So there you go. That's how we are.
Beautiful. And now, ladies and gentlemen, you know it. You love it. You know it's coming on last. Let's get down to it.
Oh boy, I have a lot of really good ones this week. Actually, that something I thought about kind of going into this week. All righty, let me try and figure this out here. Okay, number 3 on my list. This is something that is annoying because, like, if you're a student of film and of like camera work and journalism, you should know not to do this. But why is it that when we have these football games, that you have the offensive or defensive coordinators who are up in the booths, and when they flip to them on the camera screen, it's a really, really extreme close-up. It's like Tom Hooper, like Ms. Rob close-up. I don't need to see in Kellen Moore's nostrils, all right? Like, back the camera up a little bit, buddy. Like, this ain't Scorsese trying to do Gangs of New York Part 2, Like, let's just relax on the ECUs, all right? There's a rule of thirds, You want to have a third of the camera where, like, the head, all that. So why is it like this? Why am I like this if I'm doing this? Like, this is not good for anybody. This is me yelling at the people who are fans. Like, let's not do this. By the way, yeah, my eyebrows are perfectly coiffed. Thank you very much for noticing. Number 2 on my rant podium for this week, getting through all of that. This is not. I want to frame this in the right way possible, and I'm going to do it like this. Aaron Rodgers, you're a jerk. You're an a-hole. Absolutely. Because look, I understand that you're trying to be, all competitive, but don't give Minnesota more fodder by telling Andrew Van Ginkel after his pick 6, oh, Christmas came early for you, buddy. You don't even believe in Christmas, you narcissist. Like, stop it. Like, do your job and stop throwing bad interceptions and give the Jets a chance to win games. You con artist. Unbelievable. And now number 1 on my list this week, it's an old classic, but with a twist. Duncan sucks. But here's why they suck more. So, as you know, earlier this year in our pick challenge, I went winless, meaning that I had to once again go into the fall menu of Dunkin' to pick something for me to have on air to drink and then also to eat, because that's the rules, which I'm firmly ahead of. So here's my problem, Duncan. And this is like the reverse of what's going on here. You have no food options that I would like not like to eat at this point in time. Like, your breakfast sandwiches look okay. Like, you got rid of the avocado toast. That's what I would have done at this point. Maybe I'll settle for the loaded tots with the queso and the bacon, because who the hell wears queso at Dunkin'? But, like, that's not going to go well with the almond coffee that I'm going to have to drink, or the pumpkin spice latte that I'm going to have again. Like, that's, like, really? Like, bring back the terrible food options that make you really terrible. That way I can glorify how terrible they are on our stream live for the people. If Jurg has to do a Danger Witch, then I need to do an avocado toast with really, really foul-smelling ripened tomatoes. Like, come on. Bring that stuff back. And look, you could say, well, you could get a donut that you don't like, or a coffee roll or something like that, but that's not the same thing. These people demand suffering. They don't demand an unpleasant time. Go back to 2 years ago when I was sitting outside of the apartment that was in my in-laws' house because we had terrible internet over there, and I had to sit outside and then flip the camera around because the sun was in my eyes, and then drink a terrible PSL because I had just got back from San Francisco and wasted my life on that coffee. That's what people want to see. They don't want to see, oh, he actually likes the sourdough breakfast sandwich. No! They want to see suffering. We demand suffering. Bring back the really bad stuff that makes me want to just have a bad day overall. Bring that back. That's important. That is why you suck, Duncan, because you're trying to get better when you should just suck royally eternally. Bring it back. See? Told you. Old classic with a twist. There you go.
There it is. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you have no idea what any of the references he made in that part was, guys, go back in the archive of the show to all our previous streams we've done here on the Sports Agents of Chaos.
This week, 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. And of course, for even further back, we used to live on the Bunts and Bruises YouTube channel, which is kind of a barren waste at this point with our show being gone. So, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Trade targets discussed. Great list by CBS Sports. So we made our own mini trade list in the meantime. It was actually a lot better. So we'll see. The trade rumors and discussions will continue to ramp up here in the coming weeks as we slowly approach what is kind of the midway point of the season. I guess you could consider the trade deadline, considering we don't have 16 games anymore, NFL. But it should be a very good time of things over the next couple of weeks. We'll start to weed out a little bit more. Who are the contenders? Who are the pretenders? We have two undefeated teams left in the NFL. When will they fall? How quickly will hands change in the division races? We don't know. But what we do know is that we're going to cover it all here on the best NFL podcast going out there on YouTube. From the Sports Agents of Chaos to all of you, for more fun, football, and chaos for the rest of this year and beyond. Take care, everyone, and see you next time.